Blind fool! Imagine this beggar thinking he can stand where the prince will pass.
Did you see his face? Did you see him fall? Thank you.
It's all right. Chidinma, what are you doing touching him? You want to give him your curse too? The village witch has finally found herself a husband. A blind beggar and a village witch. God is so creative. Perfect match. Finally, a man who can't even see your face, so he won't run.
She had heard all of these words before, in different arrangements, her whole life. Her body already knew the shape of them. She simply stood there, holding her own hands, until the crowd moved on. Nobody in that crowd noticed the blind man's face. Nobody noticed that he was not moving like a beggar anymore. That beneath the dark glasses and the disorientation of the crowd, his posture was the posture of someone who had spent his life in rooms where people stood up when he entered. The most beautiful girls in Umudike spent that afternoon fighting to get close to the prince's car. They didn't know they had already met him. They didn't know the girl they'd spent years calling a witch had just done the one thing none of them thought to do. But to understand why that mattered, why that single moment would change everything, you need to understand who Chidinma was and what this village had decided she was long before anyone asked her. Stay with me, because this story is going to take you somewhere. Umudike was not a large village, but it had everything that makes a village feel like a world. Its gossips and its gatekeepers, its certainties and its decided outcomes. And one of those decided outcomes for 10 years was Chidinma Nwosu. She was 22. The vitiligo had appeared when she was 12, patches of lighter skin spreading across her face and neck, without warning, without reason, without any logic a 12-year-old girl deserved. The city doctors had a medical name for it. The village had a different name. Spirit mark, curse, Nwosu. Witch girl. It started with whispers, the way these things always start. An elderly woman at the market to another. That white mark wasn't there when she was born. The other woman, lowering hers, it started spreading after she turned 12. My sister said she saw it moving. A third woman, not even bothering to lower hers. Stay away from that family. If a curse can find a child that young, who knows what else it can find? Children scattered when she walked too close to them. Women moved their market stalls. Men who might have looked at her once decided quickly that they had not looked. Her father, Mazikelechi, had owned a good vegetable stall before the marks appeared. Within a year of the village deciding his daughter was cursed, the customers had quietly drifted to other stalls. If a curse can touch his daughter, who knows what else it touches? Now they survived on what little came in and what little remained. Mazikelechi had never once in 10 years treated his daughter like she was anything other than the best thing he had ever been given. But Chidinma could see what the years had done to his shoulders, to the lines around his eyes, and she carried that knowledge quietly, the way she carried everything. Prince Zain had been gone for 3 years. His full name was Zain Obiechukwu, the Igwe's only son, sent abroad at 22 for treatment on an eye condition that had been stealing his sight slowly since childhood. The villagers didn't know about this. Doctors had been cautiously hopeful. The treatment was working. His vision was returning. Not fully, not yet, not enough that he would walk into a room and see it clearly, but enough to see shapes, movement, the outline of a face if he was close enough. He still wore the dark glasses. He still used the cane. From any distance, from any stranger's perspective, he looked like a blind man. He had not corrected this assumption. He came home to a village that had spent 3 years building a story about his return. The girls had been building it too, particularly Amara, Nkechi, and Uloma, each of them beautiful in the way that makes a village stop thinking clearly. Amara's father was the most successful trader in the market, the kind of man whose wealth everyone knew without him announcing it. Nkechi came from a family connected to 2 other royal houses in the region. Uloma had been told she was beautiful so many times by so many people that she had stopped hearing it the way you stop hearing a clock because it has always been there. All 3 had been preparing for the prince's return for months. The whole village had been preparing. Prince Zain was coming. He needed a wife, and everyone had already done the arithmetic. People said it openly, the way people say things they have decided are simply facts. It will be one of those 3, the market women said, the way people say things they have decided are simply true. You watch Amara or Nkechi. The prince will have his pick. Chidinma's name did not come up in these conversations, not as a contender, not as a joke, not at all. She was not excluded deliberately, she was simply never included, which is its own cruelty because deliberate exclusion at least requires someone to have thought of you first. The night before the marketplace, Zain's father, the king, called him in. They sat in the main hall. His father looked older than he remembered. 3 years was a long time to be away from a face you loved. Tomorrow, the selection begins. Umudike needs to meet its future queen. Zain said nothing. You have nothing to say, the Igwe observed. I'm thinking. Zain turned his face toward the window he could not quite see through. 3 years abroad, Papa. Every doctor, every nurse, every person in those hospitals, the moment they knew who I was, they changed. Not worse, too well, too much performance. A pause. How do I choose a woman who has only ever seen a crown? How do I know who she actually is? The Igwe looked at his son for a long moment. A queen, he said, in the voice he kept for things he had thought about carefully over many years, is not the woman who is kind when the whole village is watching. She is the woman who is kind when nobody important is looking, when there is nothing to gain, when the person in front of her can give her absolutely nothing. He held his son's gaze. That woman exists. Go and find her.
Zain didn't sleep much that night. The royal SUV overheated on the main road on a Tuesday morning. Zain stepped out for air while the driver checked the engine. The crowd recognized the plates immediately and surged. He was not prepared for how fast it moved. The crowd separated him from his dads in less than a minute, and suddenly he was standing in the middle of a road he could not see clearly, cane in hand, trying to track sound and movement, losing both. Amara's shoulder hit him when she pushed past him. Then she turned and shoved him properly. And that was where the story really began. Captain Emeka found him 20 minutes after the crowd thinned, sitting on a low wall near the road, completely still, dark glasses on, cane across his knees. Your Highness, barely above a whisper. Zain gripped his arm before he could say more. Not here, walk with me. They moved away from the road, away from the stragglers still buzzing near the palace plates. Emeka waited. Nobody in that crowd knew me, Zain said. Your Highness, I was standing in the middle of this village for 20 minutes. I've been gone 3 years. I look nothing like I looked before I left. He paused. Nobody knew me, Emeka. Not one person. Emeka's jaw tightened slightly. What are you saying, sir? I want to walk among them as someone else. 3 days, Zain thought. I'll say I'm a palace worker's son, visiting from outside. And your father? Tell him I am safe. Tell him I need 3 days and I will explain everything when I return. He'll understand. A pause. He might not like it, but he'll understand. We cannot leave you unguarded. You'll follow at a distance. Don't let me see you and don't let anyone see you watching me. You know how to do that. Emeka pressed his lips together. He did know how to do that. "And the selection," he said. "The village is expecting to see you. If no prince appears, people will ask questions." "Then let them see a prince," Zain said. "It's where ideas arrive, not planned, just suddenly present. Find your most presentable guard, dress him, put him in the car, let him ride through the village, let the girls see him, let them perform for him." He paused. "I want to watch who these women are when they think it doesn't matter, when they think nobody important is looking." Emeka looked at his prince for a long moment. "Your father will remove my head from my shoulders. My father told me to find a woman who is kind when nobody important is looking." Zain almost smiled. "Help me look." Another long moment. Then Emeka nodded once. 3 days, he said, "and I am telling you now, I will be close enough to hear you breathe." "I know," Zain said. "You always are." Emeka nodded slowly. He did not like this. He had not liked things before and served faithfully anyway. He would do the same now. They separated. Zain turned back toward the village with his cane and his dark glasses and his 3 days and everything he had already heard and was not finished hearing. He found Chidinma still at the road's edge, water container in her hands, ready to leave now that the crowd had moved on. He crossed toward her carefully and stopped a few feet away. "You helped me earlier on the road." She looked up, wary, the wariness of someone who has learned that unexpected attention usually comes with something attached. "The cane," he said. She went back to her container. It was nothing. Nobody else stopped. She didn't answer that. "Could you walk me as far as the next junction? I keep losing my direction in this crowd." She looked at him. Then she said, "Come." They walked. She described things without being asked. A route ahead, a stall blocking the road, the junction on the right. No performance, just practicality. He asked her name. She told him. He told his. "Zain, my father is the palace groundskeeper. I came from outside to visit." Not a lie. His father was the palace. She accepted this with no follow-up. He noticed that she asked nothing about what his father's connection might mean for her. He noticed she asked nothing useful about him at all. They were passing the fabric stalls when Amara's group saw them. Amara looked at them the way she looked at things that amused her without requiring her full attention. "Chidinma, look at you. You finally found a man." Her friends, Nkechi, covered her mouth. Uloma actually turned away to laugh properly. "Look at them, the blind man and the witch holding hands in the market." Uloma added, "She's guiding him, of course she is. Who else is either of them going to find?" "Walk faster, Chidinma. Maybe people can see your face and maybe they'll think you're normal. Maybe he'll propose before someone tells him." Uloma added. More laughter, louder this time. A child pointed. 2 traders turned to look. The laughter spread to traders nearby. Even a few older women smiled. Chidinma kept walking. Her head didn't drop this time, but her jaw tightened. He saw it from the side, the specific tightening of someone who has been doing this for so long, the grief has become a muscle reflex. When they were past it, he said, "Do they do that every time they see you?" She said, "When they remember to." "How long?" "Since I was 12. A pause. "Since the marks came." "Does it?" He stopped himself. She glanced at him. "Does it hurt?" "You don't have to answer." "It stopped hurting like a bruise stops hurting," she said. "You still feel it. You just expect it now." He walked beside her and said nothing for a moment. He was quiet. Then he asked, "Why didn't you respond?" "There's nothing to say." A pause. And anyway, her voice shifted slightly, a small self-conscious drop. "They are not entirely wrong. I'm not easy to look at. You should be grateful you can't see me." He turned toward her. "If you could see my face, you'd probably cross the road or look away. That's what people do." Her voice was flat, not bitter, just reporting a fact. "Or you'd smile and be kind to my face and whisper to the next person after." She almost laughed. He didn't answer immediately. She added, "Or, best case, you'd run. Most people run. I'm not running and I'm standing right here. That's because you can't see me." The palace groundskeeper's son needed somewhere to stay for the night. This was not planned. Maziobiora found his daughter in the road at dusk with a young man from the city who said he had nowhere to sleep. This was all the information Mazi needed. "Come," he said. That was it. No discussion. The hut was small. The roof had a place where the evening air came through. Maziobira apologized for the food before he served it. "We only have yam and oil tonight. I'm sorry, there's no meat." "I like yam," Zain said. Mazi looked at him the way people look at someone who suspects of lying kindly and decided to believe him anyway. When Zain's head was down, eating, not watching, Mazi lifted a portion from his own side and slid it quietly across. Chidinma saw. After they ate, Zain stepped outside. Chidinma went to her father immediately. Low voice, "You gave him your food." Mazi waved his hand. "A guest eats first. It's how we were raised. Papa, that was your portion. An old man doesn't need much." She looked at him. This man with the tired shoulders and the kind eyes, who had spent 10 years refusing to be ashamed of her, refusing to reduce her, refusing to let a village's story become the story inside their house. "You gave a stranger your dinner," she said. "Better a stranger eat than a stranger leave hungry." He settled back. "Besides, something about that one. I don't know what, but something." Outside in the dark, Zain stood still. He had heard all of it. A man with almost nothing had quietly moved his own food so a stranger would have enough, without telling anyone, without wanting thanks. He stood there for a long time. Then he thought about what he had heard on the road that morning, the shove, the laughter, the way Chidinma had absorbed it without breaking. He thought about the girl in this house who had spent 10 years in a village that decided her worth before it knew her name, who still described routes in the road so a stranger didn't trip, who still apologized for honest answers. He had come looking for something specific. He was no longer looking. He stayed another day. Now stop with me for a moment because I want to hear from you. Has anyone ever been kind to you when they had absolutely nothing to gain from it? When you were the blind man in the mud and someone stopped, not for praise, not for audience, not for anything, just stopped? Tell me about that person in the comments. Tell me who they were and what they did, because I think somebody reading this today needs to be reminded that those people exist, that kindness like that is real. Drop your country too. I want to see the full map of where this story is landing. And if you are not subscribed to Abby Stories Empire, right now before the next scene, because what comes next is the part I've been building towards since the first word of this story. The next morning, the village woke to one rumor. The prince is touring the village today. Nobody had actually seen his face before. So when a royal convoy rolled through Umudike, when a tall, handsome young man stepped out wearing royal clothes, everyone bowed. That man wasn't the prince. It was Gad Tubena, exactly as Zain had planned. Within minutes, the whole village transformed. Women who never greeted old people suddenly carried baskets. Young men started sweeping roads. Children were warned to behave. Everybody wanted the prince to notice them. Nobody tried harder than Amara. She carried Mama Chedo's water from the well. She helped a trader restack falling yams with her own hands. She smiled warmly at children who had never seen her smile at them. The whole village was discussing it by afternoon. Had you seen Amara? Had you noticed the change? Was this not exactly the character a future queen needed? She walked beside the fake prince, carrying a basket of fruit, smiling, laughing, helping elderly women, greeting everybody loudly. So kind, so humble. She's already acting like a queen. The entire village began whispering, "It has to be Amara. Look how beautiful they look together." Even Chidinma overheard them. She simply smiled and kept selling vegetables beside her father. From across the market, the real prince watched everything. Every smile, every performance, every act that only existed because everyone believed the prince was watching. He smiled to himself. People always reveal themselves, especially when they think they are pretending. The result had been everything Zain expected. Zane heard about Amara's sudden change from Chidinma and said, "Has she done that before?" A pause. "Mama Chedo is one of the ones who calls me Nwosu." She let this sit. "So no," Chidinma said. That afternoon, Tobena's vehicle made a second pass through the main road. The crowd gathered. Amara positioned herself, dressed, ready, carrying herself like a woman waiting for an announcement to confirm what she already knew. Zane was standing near the road. He had asked Chidinma to bring him close so he could track the crowd by sound, and she had walked him there before stepping to a nearby stall. Amara spotted him standing alone. She looked at him. Cane, dark glasses, then she looked at the approaching vehicle, then back to him. She walked over with a warmth she had been practicing. "You, do you need help? Here." She took his arm, facing the road where Tobena's vehicle was slowing, making sure she was visible doing it. "I'm trying to get back toward the Palace Road. My father is the groundskeeper. I'm staying near the gate." Tobena's window was cracked open. He glanced over. Amara smiled. The procession was still moving. She kept one eye on it the whole way, half her attention on the vehicle, her grip loose and performative rather than useful. The vehicle passed the junction. "Actually," she said. She let go. She turned to Nkechi and Uluma, dropping her voice. "These palace workers' relatives are always wandering around this village looking for someone to attach themselves to. His father sweeps the compound and he wants a personal escort." She laughed. Her friends laughed. Uluma looked at Zane, still standing there. "And the smell. Did you sleep in the gutter?" "Come," Amara said, already walking. She left him standing. Then she stopped. "Chidinma," she called it across the road toward the stall where Chidinma had stepped. "I brought your blind husband back. Come and collect him before he wanders into traffic." The people nearby laughed. Chidinma came back from the stall. She found Zane exactly where she had left him. "She said she wanted to help me," he said. "Yes," and then left. The prince's car passed. "That's why," Chidinma laughed. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, almost to himself, very quietly, "I see." They walked back without speaking. Then he said, "Does it ever stop surprising you when people change completely depending on who is watching?" Chidinma was quiet. "What?" "Change completely depending on who is watching." She thought about it. "No, it stopped surprising me a long time ago." A pause. "What surprises me now is when people are the same whether someone is watching or not. Those are the ones I remember." He turned his face slightly toward her. She didn't notice. She was looking at the road ahead. The night before the selection, Chidinma sat outside and looked at the stars. She had overheard something in the market that afternoon. She was not supposed to hear it. It was said just far enough behind her to be deniable, which meant it was said exactly where it was meant to land. Uluma said to Amara, "The selection is tomorrow. Are you nervous?" Amara, "Nervous about what? Who in this village is actually competing with us?" Nkechi laughed. "What about?" A gesture in the direction of Chidinma, not even bothering to reduce her voice. Silence. Then Amara's voice, genuinely unbothered, the voice of someone who has never considered something seriously enough to lower it. "The witch? Even if the prince decided to marry a goat, he would still not choose Chidinma. Some people are simply not for certain things. That's not cruelty. That's just how the world is arranged." Laughter. Fading down the road. She pretended like she hadn't heard them and walked past. The thing that had stopped hurting like a bruise hadn't stopped entirely. It had just moved deeper. She decided that night she wasn't going. She was not part of this. She had never been part of this. The selection was for girls the village considered worth selecting, and she had been told in 100 different ways since she was 12 years old that she was not on that list. In the morning, Maziobiala found her in the house when she should have been getting ready. He stood in the doorway. He looked at his daughter, this woman who still rose early, who still helped neighbors who insulted her, who had given more grace to this village than it had ever returned to her. and something moved across his face that was not quite sadness. Closer to a quiet fury, the kind that belongs to fathers. "Why are you sitting here? Everyone is going to the palace," he said. "There is no point, Papa. You are going." "What is the point? I am not in the running. I have never been in the running. I will walk in there and within 2 minutes people will start laughing." "Chidinma." His voice broke slightly on her name, then steadied. "I watched this village take everything from us slowly. The customers, the income, the way people look at us when we walk past. I watched it and I said nothing because I thought silence was dignity." He paused. "I was wrong. You are going to that courtyard, not for the prince, not for the village. You are going because you are my daughter, and you will not stay hidden in this house because other people are small." She looked at her father. "What if... let them laugh." He held out her wrapper, her best one, which was still just her market wrapper, but freshly pressed. "Let them say every word they have, and you walk into that courtyard like you belong everywhere." She took the wrapper. The courtyard was full. Not just Amara and her friends, every girl in Umudike who had been measuring herself against this moment for months. Women in their best wrappers, mothers who had dressed their daughters carefully, girls who had practiced walking and sitting and smiling in the specific way of people who know they are about to be watched.
The courtyard hummed with anticipation, the way a room hums before something starts. Chidinma walked in at the back. Someone spotted Chidinma in under 2 minutes. "She came!" A girl's voice, the particular delight of someone who has found the day's entertainment. "Chidinma actually came to a bright selection." Uloma turned, smiled slowly. "Nekechi, did someone tell her there was free food?" "Maybe she thinks the prince likes witches." Laughter. A few people laughed, others looked at the ground. Most did nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Then Amara's voice from near the front, not even turning fully around, pitched at exactly the volume needed to carry without seeming to try. "Chidinma, please, you are embarrassing yourself and you are embarrassing your father. Go home." Some people in the courtyard looked away. Some didn't. Mazi Kelechi's hand found his daughter's and held it. Chidinma stood still. She had heard every version of this her entire life. She was still standing. That had always been the only answer that mattered. The drums began. Tobe now walked in, full regalia, composed, handsome in the specific way that makes a crowd want to be near someone. Every girl in the courtyard adjusted her posture. Amara's smile opened like something she had been keeping for exactly this moment. The Igwe moles. "Umudike." The courtyard went quiet immediately. "My son has walked among you for 3 days, not as your prince, as a man, with no name and no title. He has seen this village, your market, your roads, your homes, and he has seen the people in it. How you treat a stranger, how you treat someone who cannot give you anything, who you are when you believe it does not matter." The shift in the crowd was physical. He has made his choice. Tobena stood before the crowd. He let the silence build. He had been coached carefully on what to say and when to pause. "People of Umudike," he said, "your prince greets you." Then he did the thing Zain had instructed him to do from the beginning. He stepped aside. "I am not your prince," he said again. Gasps erupted from the villagers. He turned to the eastern entrance. "Your prince," he said again, "greets you himself." Zain walked in. No cane, no dark glasses, a simple traditional attire. Nothing elaborate, but his posture was the posture that had always been his, the posture of someone who had spent a lifetime in rooms where people stood.
The silence that fell was the silence of a group of people arriving at the same understanding at the same moment, and not one of them knowing what to do with it. Amara's chin came down. Slowly, completely. Nekechi made a sound that was not a word. Uloma took one step backward and then stood perfectly still because there was nowhere useful to go. The blind man, from the road, from the market, the one Amara had dropped the moment the car passed, the one she had smiled over, the one Nekechi had said smelled like he slept outside, the one Uloma had laughed at for standing too close to Chidinma, the one who had heard every single word from every single one of them. Standing in the palace courtyard with his father beside him, looking at the crowd with eyes that had been returning to him for months and could now see everything. The Igwe rose again. "My son has walked among you for 3 days," he said. "Not as a prince, as a man. He has seen you as you are, not as you performed." The courtyard was silent in a way that had weight. Zain looked at the assembled village. His sight had been returning faster than anyone knew. He could see all of it clearly now. The full courtyard, every face. He looked at Amara first. She straightened, force of habit. "Come here." She walked forward. Every eye in the courtyard followed her. The same women who had spent months calling her the future queen. Every single person in that space watched Amara walk toward the man she had shoved into the mud. She stopped in front of him. He held out his hand. She stared at it for a moment. Then she understood what he was asking. She reached forward and helped him take one step. He didn't need it. He had walked in without a cane. She helped him take one small step. He let her. Then he gently withdrew his hand. Silence. "Do you know what I spent 3 days looking for?" he said. She swallowed. "Your Highness." "Kindness," he said. "That was all. Just kindness. Not beauty, not family name, not performance. Just kindness." He looked at her steadily. "Do you know how many times I found it in you?" She said nothing. "In 3 days," he said. "Not once." The courtyard was so quiet you could hear the wind. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every person in the courtyard had watched Amara become the standard every other girl was measured against. Mothers had pointed at her and whispered, "Walk like her." Traders had said, "That one will be queen." And now in front of every one of those same people, the prince was saying he had searched for one thing in her. And he never found it. "That," Zain said, "is 3 days. 3 days of opportunities. 3 days of moments where kindness cost nothing, where all you had to do was stop. And every single time you looked at me and decided I was not worth it." He looked at her for a long moment. "Tell me something." She swallowed. "Your Highness." "When you pushed me into the mud," he said, "what did you think I was?" Her lips trembled in shame. Nothing came out. "A beggar?" asked Zain. Silence. "A burden?" Silence. "Someone beneath you?" She couldn't answer, because every answer was yes. He nodded once. "I thought so." Amara's eyes were now clouding with tears. "I didn't know, sir," she started. "I know you didn't know." He nodded once. "That is exactly the point. If you had known I was the prince, you would never have pushed me. You would never have laughed. You would have picked up my cane before it touched the ground. You would have called me Your Highness. But kindness that appears after a title is announced isn't kindness, it's strategy." "You are beautiful," he said. "I'm not going to stand here and pretend you are not. I'm also not going to pretend that beauty wasn't the first thing I would have seen if I could see properly from the beginning. Maybe the choice would have been harder. I don't know. Beauty may open a door, but character decides whether anyone invites you to stay." He looked at her for a long moment. He turned away from her. And the turning away was the thing that broke Amara completely. Not the words, not the village watching, not the public accounting of every moment she had failed. It was that he finished speaking and turned away from her as if the conversation was simply over. The way you turn away from something you have already decided about, something that required no further consideration. She had spent her whole life being the person everyone looked toward. He looked away and walked past Nkechi, past Oloma, past every girl the village had already chosen, until he stopped in front of the one nobody had. From that day on, whenever the village spoke of Amara, they no longer spoke first of her beauty. They remembered the day the prince looked away. The crowd parted for him as he walked all the way to the back, then stopped in front of Chidinma. She had not moved from the back. She was still holding her father's hand. She looked at this man walking toward her, and she recognized him, the posture, the way he moved, the 3 days of small moments suddenly rearranging themselves into a shape she could finally see, and the understanding arrived all at once. Zain looked at her. He saw her clearly. The vitiligo, the patches on her face and neck that this village had built 10 years of stories around. He looked at all of it with full sight, and his face did nothing different from what it had been doing for 3 days. He had imagined her face, not deliberately, but in 3 days of walking beside her, of hearing her voice describe the road ahead so he didn't stumble, of listening to her say the truest things in the flattest tones. He had built some version of her in his mind. He was looking at her now. She looked back at him. He said, "You told me if I could see your face, I'd probably run." She didn't answer. "I can see your face." He looked at her for a long, complete moment. "I'm still here." And then, because he was his father's son, he knelt. The courtyard made a sound, not quite a gasp, not quite silence, something between them. "You fed me from the last food in your house and apologized that it wasn't more. You walked me through this village for 2 days without asking what I could give you. You helped people who called you a witch on the same morning they said it." He took her hand. "My father told me to find a woman who is kind when nobody important is looking. I found you before I even knew I was looking." Chidinma looked down at him. Behind her, Kelechi covered his face. His shoulders shook once, then again. She said, "You're sure?" "I've been sure since the mud." He reached for her hand. She let him take it. "This village spent 10 years deciding what you are worth before it knew who you were," he said. "I spent 3 days watching, and I am telling you, in front of everyone who told you otherwise, they were wrong. They have always been wrong." In the back of the courtyard, Kelechi sat down on the ground, not because he was unwell, because his legs had simply stopped cooperating with the weight of this moment. He sat in the dirt of the palace courtyard, this man with early lines around his eyes and 10 years of quietly held grief, and he cried, without any effort to stop himself. An old man who had prayed the same prayer every night for 10 years, watching it arrive all at once. The palace physician stood before the village the following morning and explained what vitiligo was, what it had always been, a skin condition, cells that stopped producing pigment, harmless, not contagious, not a spirit, not a curse, not a mark of anything except biology. The village listened. It is not easy to watch people absorb 10 years of wrong. You cannot undo it cleanly. People shifted, people looked at the ground, people thought about their stalls and their whispers and the children they had let run from a 12-year-old girl, and the years they had collectively participated in something that cost a good man his business and a good girl her peace. The Igwa himself visited Mazikelechi's vegetable stall that week, paid generously, mentioned it to people. Within days, the stall had its customers back, not out of guilt exactly, but out of the particular recalculation that happens when a village watches itself be wrong and decides quietly to start doing differently. Amara watched all of this from where she was standing. She did not cry publicly. She did not perform devastation. She stood very still and she understood fully, finally, that she had not lost a competition. She had failed a test she didn't know she was taking. The prince had not been choosing between beautiful girls. He had been watching something else entirely in moments she decided didn't matter, and she had shown him exactly who she was in every single one of them. That was the part she would carry. Not the loss, the reason for it.
That night, long after the palace had gone quiet, Zain called Captain Emeka. "I need you to find some people for me." Emeka looked up. "The old farmer who walked me back toward the palace road after I lost my way. His name was John." Emeka nodded and committed it to memory. "There was a woman who insisted I take roasted corn, even after I told her I had no money. Mama Ifeoma. The little boy who stopped me from walking into the broken bridge, Chike." He named them one after another. Every person who had stopped, every person who had helped, every person who had treated a stranger like a human being. Emeka smiled faintly. "You asked all of them for their names." "I did. I thought you were only making conversation." "So did they." A quiet smile touched Zain's face. "I was making a list." Within days, the palace found every one of them. John received new farming tools and land. Mama Ifeoma's struggling store was rebuilt and stocked. Young Chike was given a scholarship that would carry him through college, and his mother was given a huge stipend for his upkeep. None of them had asked for a reward. None of them had even known they had helped a prince. When they asked why, the only answer they received was simple: the prince remembers kindness. Months later, a small girl was running through the Umudike market, screaming with laughter, chasing two other children. She was 6 years old. She had vitiligo patches on her wrist and the side of her face, the kind the village would have called a curse 3 months ago. Nobody called it anything now. Nobody moved away from her. Nobody whispered. Nobody pointed. The traders she ran past smiled the way you smile at a child who is simply being a child. Because of Queen Chidinma, because the queen of this kingdom wore the same marks on her face, and what the queen wore, the village had decided quietly, without announcement, the way villages decide things that matter, was not something to be afraid of. It was just a face, it was just a person, and the only thing that had needed to change was never the marks, it was always the village. There is a kind of kindness that asks nothing back, that does not track its own generosity or wait for the moment it pays off, that picks up a cane in the mud because the cane is on the ground and a person needs it, and then moves on without making it an event. The world makes it very hard to be that kind. The world tells you to protect yourself, to save your warmth for people who have demonstrated they deserve it, to be strategic about goodness the way you are strategic about resources. And sometimes the world is right. Sometimes kindness falls into the wrong hands and goes unnoticed and costs you something you needed. Before you go, I want to leave you with something. The elders say the tree that survives the longest is not the one that bends the least. It is the one that whose roots go deepest where nobody can see them. Chidinma had roots nobody could see. 10 years of standing through a storm that never stopped. 10 years of helping people who called her names on the way to helping them. 10 years of her father saying a guest eats first when there was barely enough for two. Nobody was watching that. Nobody who thought it mattered anyway. But one person was watching, and it changed everything.
You don't know whose eyes are on you in the moments you think don't count. You don't know which ordinary Tuesday is the Tuesday that decides the rest of your story. You don't know who is watching you be exactly who you are, in the mud, in the market, in the moments with nothing to gain. So be who you actually are, in those moments especially. Now, I want to ask you something different from what I usually ask. Not just what moment in this story got you, though I want to know that too. Tell me this. Has there ever been a time in your life when you were kind to someone, truly kind, nothing in it for you, nobody watching, and it came back to you in a way you never expected? Tell me the story right here in the comments, because I think the most powerful thing in this comment section is not going to be what I wrote. It is going to be what you write. And tell me this too. Have you ever been a Chidinma? Have you ever kept showing up to a place that kept telling you that you didn't belong there? Tell me what happened. Drop your country as well. From Lagos to London, Nairobi to Atlanta, let me see where this story landed today. We are Abby Stories Empire. In this space, we do not tell soft stories, we tell true ones. Stories about the people nobody counted, finding themselves in exactly the place everyone said they didn't belong. Subscribe and stay with us, because the next story is already waiting, and I promise you it belongs right after this one.